was a bad opening from Magnus Carlsen. It was very one-sided after that. He never managed to get back in the game, and it was all due to the weakness of the Black King. This is why we say castle in every game. A king in the center will get attacked from all sides of the board. And Nakamura, sometimes he hasn't been able to finish off Magnus Carlsen in previous games on the tour, but this time he did. And what style he did it in. He gave a check with the White Queen, attacking the Black King, forcing it back, and now using all of his pieces, he just slid his rook across one square, supporting a future advance of this pawn. Black now has to blockade it, otherwise it's just too strong. Black using his queen, actually the worst blockaders of pawns, but it had to be done. That Black Queen stepping in front of the pawn. White gave a check. Nakamura now snatching a pawn, one pawn up, and I think Magnus Carlsen, he just had to bite the bullet, take this pawn, and hope to survive. Instead, he brought his Black King finally to safety, but it was too late. After White took another pawn, going 2 pawns up, Black gave a check, and then took a pawn, but it was too late to take this pawn. Nakamura finishing the game in style with finesse. He just gave up his queen, eliminating one of Black's pieces, and Magnus actually resigned here because if queen takes queen, White would push his pawn, and this pawn is now unstoppable. It's about to become a queen itself, supported by this rook. White would be a rook up, no chance for the world champion, and therefore Carlsen resigned. Yeah, it was a bit of an opening disaster for Nakamura in a position he had seen before. In this position as Black, against Caruana 1 year ago, Nakamura played knight takes bishop, eliminating a potential attacking piece for White, and the game went on. Eventually, he made a draw. This time, however, he forgot to play this move. He should have played this move, because instead, playing a slow, quiet move on the other side of the board, he did allow White to use this bishop, which survived on the last turn, to sacrifice itself and open up the Black King. The bishop taking a pawn, giving itself up for 2 pawns, the White Queen jumping into the position, and we actually saw the deadly move come next. White finding the key idea after Black tried to bring his bishop to the defense. Magnus finding a rook lift, swinging this rook across, attacking this bishop, and now bringing it towards the Black King. And actually, I think the position that illustrates White's dominance the most came in a few moments' time. If we fast forward just 3-4 moves, we see this position with still White attacking with the queen, attacking with the rook, the knight, and the bishop. And look where they're all ganging up. They are all ganging up against this square. Black's bishop, it did eventually fall. All of Black's King's defenders were eliminated, and Magnus went on to checkmate.
That's it.
Great game by Magnus, and it all came down to one decision. One move settled this one, and it was very difficult to see here from Nakamura that advancing a pawn, attacking the knight, was actually a mistake. And Magnus, the key move, the winning move in the end, was just ignoring the attack on that knight, pushing his pawn forward, creating these 2 powerful passed pawns. We saw later on that those 2 pawns, or the potential of those 2 pawns, won Magnus the game. And the reason this is so strong is because if Black had tried to take the White Knight, we would have seen a trade of rooks, and suddenly the White Queen coming across. Black has an extra knight, but that knight is helpless. White will simply push these pawns and win the game. Really nice idea from Magnus Carlsen, and beautiful technique to finish it off.
Wow.
We saw that long, drawn-out, difficult endgame, but actually there was some fireworks right at the beginning of this game. We did see fantastic opening preparation by both players, and that started with this move. White actually sacrificing a bishop, attacking the Black Queen on this square. If Black's Queen took this bishop, suddenly we would have seen checkmate on the board, the Black King trapped on this square. Instead, we saw Black advance. Looks like a double attack. White's queen, White's bishop, both en prise here. White now ignored that attack completely, jumping forward with his knight, and this initiated a series of exchanges. Black here, again, using that same strategy, ignoring the attack on the Black Queen and just castling so calmly. And after a couple of moves, we saw the queens traded from the board in this really rare, unique, unorthodox fashion. Black now taking the White Queen, White's bishop jumping forward, and this exchange of queens, I've never seen anything like it before. Eventually, things started to clarify. White won a pawn, but it wasn't enough to win the game. And that's always the case in rook endgames. Rook endgames, they're the most common type of endgame. They're also the trickiest. And this was actually the moment it started to go wrong for Nepomniachtchi. In this moment, the black pawn is attacked. He should have pushed it forward. And the whole idea is that after White gets his rook behind the pawn where it wants to be, suddenly the black rook will drop down and cut off the White king. White's king now will never be able to enter the game. Black will simply put his other pawn on this square, and the 2 black pawns would just paralyze white's army. Instead, black went behind the pass pawn, which was what he should do, but in a moment we did see that the 3rd black pawn, well, black's pawn dropped off, so white went 3 pawns up on the right side of the board. And once white got these 3 pawns rolling, if we go a couple of more moves into the game, once these 3 pawns started running, it was impossible to deal with them.